What if I told you that one of Hollywood's brightest legends, the man who made us cheer in Independence Day, who guarded the universe in Men in Black, and who made us cry our hearts out in the pursuit of happiness, was carrying a secret? That behind Will Smith's larger-than-life smile and blockbuster legacy, there's a story so raw, so painful, it threatens to shatter everything we thought we knew about him. Will Smith wasn't just a superstar, he was a force of nature. His charisma could fill a room, his energy could set it on fire, and his acting could swing from explosive laughter to soul-crushing tears in a heartbeat. For decades, he didn't just rule the box office, he ruled our hearts. A shining crown of Hollywood greatness, a hero, an inspiration. But the truth? His crown was forged in fire, and scarred by shadows the world never saw. Will's journey from a street-smart rapper in West Philadelphia to a global icon looks like a story of triumph. But behind every movie poster, every standing ovation, was a battlefield of betrayal, heartbreak, and regret. For years, the public only saw the radiant smile, but hidden deep inside, a boy terrified, haunted, and scarred. His story forces us to ask one chilling question: can the brightest light in Hollywood survive the darkness of its own shadow? And before we dive in, tell me this: do you believe Will Smith is one of the rarest, most once-in-a-lifetime talents to ever grace the big screen? If your answer is yes, hit like right now as a tribute to the man who made the world laugh while silently drowning in his own pain. Because the rise of Will Smith did not begin in joy, but in screams. Love breaking under the weight of fear. Willard Carroll Smith Jr. was born on September 25, 1968, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The second of 4 children, he grew up with his older sister, Pamela, and his younger twin siblings, Harry and Ellen. His father, Willard Smith Sr., was a refrigeration engineer. Discipline, oil, and fire followed him into the house every night. His mother, Caroline Bright, was a school administrator, gentle but steady, chalk dust on her hands, and unshakable resolve in her voice. On paper, it looked perfect. A middle-class family, stable, promising. But inside those walls, chaos, storms, a marriage stretched to breaking. Will's father was strict and feared, his mother steady and disciplined but soft-spoken. Between them was a fault line, and when it broke, it carved itself into Will's soul forever. He was just 9 years old when he froze in terror. A shout, a blow, his mother collapsing, his father's hand. Will didn't move. He didn't fight. And in his silence, he felt something darker than fear. Shame. Years later, he would confess, "I always thought of myself as a coward, because I saw my father hit my mother, and I didn't do anything." That night shattered him. The man he admired became the man who broke his heart, and the boy who adored his father carried the weight of that betrayal forever. The wound never closed. Yes, his house wasn't poor, his neighborhood wasn't dangerous, but safety is never about money. His reality was truthfully this: not poor, but never safe. So Will found his escape: television, hip-hop, laughter. If he could make people laugh, maybe the storms would stop. Humor became his armor. Performance became survival. And from survival, he built an identity. That big, dazzling smile? It wasn't born from joy, it was born from hiding fear. As he grew older, his parents drifted further apart. They finally divorced when Will was already a superstar, but the scars had been carved long before. His mother, Caroline, became his anchor, his strength, the woman he spent his whole life trying to protect. Years later, Will openly admitted, "Everything I've built, everything I've done, comes from trying to protect my mother." Think about that. Every movie, every award, every billion-dollar success. born out of a 9-year-old boy trying to rewrite the worst night of his life. Will Smith's childhood wasn't painted in innocence, it was etched in scars. But those scars forged fire. The boy who once froze in fear became a man who could command the world's biggest stage. Yet tragedy lingers even inside triumph. Because Will's rise was never soft. It was a crucible. Flame, betrayal, guilt, resilience. And when success finally came, it carried its own bitter aftertaste. By the mid-1980s, still just a teenager with unstoppable energy, he teamed up with his childhood friend, Jeffrey Towns, DJ Jazzy Jeff. They became DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, releasing upbeat, family-friendly rap that parents approved of and kids adored. For the first time, rap was welcome not just on the streets, but in suburban living rooms. At just 20 years old, Will Smith had it all. A Grammy-winning record, fame, fortune. He was living the dream. But behind the cheers, whispers cut him down. Hardcore rappers sneered. Soft. Critics dismissed him. Commercial. And the final blow hit in 1989. Will and Jeff won the first ever Grammy for Best Rap Performance, with Parents Just Don't Understand. A historic, golden moment. But it turned bitter instantly when legends of rap boycotted the ceremony. They refused to attend because the Recording Academy didn't even televise the rap category. So there he stood, with history in his hands, smiling for the world. But inside, isolated, disrespected, triumph wrapped in rejection. Money poured in, cars, jewelry, parties. Fame drowned him in noise, and he didn't notice when responsibility slipped away. That's when the IRS came knocking. By 21, Will was broke, flat broke. Millions gone to back taxes. Cars gone. He went from Grammy glory to financial ruin overnight. I had a hit record, a Grammy. And then suddenly I was broke, he later confessed. The fall was crushing. One year he was living the dream, the next he was a cautionary tale whispered across the industry. But that collapse carved his first true lesson. Talent can open doors, but discipline is the only thing that keeps them open. Then, destiny knocked. 1990. Legendary producer Quincy Jones invited Will to a star-studded party. In the middle of the night, Quincy turned to him and demanded, "Audition right now." Here, in this living room, no script, no rehearsal. Will panicked. He wasn't ready. But Quincy pressed harder. "Do it now. Take the chance, or it's gone." So with nothing but instinct and desperation, Will performed. That living room became a stage. The silence became his spotlight. And in minutes, the entire room knew. He was the Fresh Prince. Overnight, he went from broke rapper to TV sensation. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was born. This wasn't just a second chance. It was resurrection. From the ashes of debt, humiliation, and rejection. Will Smith was reborn as a new kind of star. But Hollywood's crown always cuts deepest when it sparkles brightest. And though the laughs of Fresh Prince transformed him into America's sweetheart, the weight of that golden crown was only just beginning. Because what started as light-hearted comedy was about to catapult him straight into the roaring chaos of blockbuster superstardom. And there, every victory came with a hidden wound. Bad Boys lit the fuse. Independence Day made him humanity's savior. And Men in Black carved his smile into global pop culture forever. To the world, Will Smith looked unstoppable, fearless, charming, the man who could save Earth with nothing but a grin. But that grin? It was heavy. Fame gave him power, but it also built a cage. The world demanded perfection, always polished, always radiant. Critics sneered that he was too clean, too artificial. And Will himself admitted later, "No matter what I did, people only saw the image, not the person. Imagine giving your soul to the world and still feeling invisible. So he chased something deeper. In 2001, he stepped into the role of Muhammad Ali in Ali, but playing a man who was more than an athlete, who was fire, scars, and history itself, nearly broke him. Will pushed his body until it screamed, sparred until bruises turned his ribs purple, trained his voice until it cracked in exhaustion. Every punch wasn't just acting, it was agony. The applause was thunderous. The Academy Award nomination poured in, but behind it, Will was hollow, crushed under the weight of proving his worth. Then came The Pursuit of Happiness in 2006. And this time, it wasn't just a role, it was memory. Playing Chris Gardner, the father fighting against poverty, meant reopening wounds of his own childhood. Every desperate plea on screen echoed the vow of a 9-year-old boy who once froze as his mother was struck. "My children will never live through what I lived through." The tears rolling down his face weren't performance. They were scars released after decades. That film earned him another Oscar nomination, and for Will, something even greater: healing. But even as triumphs rose, regrets haunted him. He turned down Neo in The Matrix. He said no to Tarantino's Django Unchained, and each missed chance carved its own scar. He would later admit, "I've made bad choices." And sometimes I wonder what might have been, then, redemption. In King Richard, 2021, Will embodied Richard Williams, the flawed father protecting Venus and Serena with ferocity. For Will, it was like staring into a mirror, imperfect, relentless, determined. And when the Academy crowned him Best Actor in 2022, the ovation was deafening. After decades of hiding pain behind jokes, of carrying Hollywood on his shoulders, he finally stood tall as man, as father, as soul. For that one night, the crown was his. But the higher the crown, the sharper its edge. Because only minutes later, under those same lights, the triumph that should have sealed his legacy became its darkest wound. A joke about Jada. Will rising, his face carved in fury. And then, the slap. His hand across Chris Rock's face. The theater gasped, the sound sharper, louder than any applause. In seconds, the miracle of victory collapsed into infamy, his legacy rewritten before the world's eyes. The fallout was brutal. Banned from the Academy for 10 years. Resigned in disgrace. Films stalled. Studios silent. Decades of honor overshadowed by seconds of rage. Will later confessed, it was a scar for life. Apologies followed, trembling with regret. "I was wrong. I hurt people." Gone was the invincible hero. What remained was a man, fragile and flawed, desperately seeking redemption. And maybe for the first time, the world saw not the star, but the human. Yet his story does not end there. Because beyond the spotlight, beyond the slap, beyond Hollywood itself, is the rawest side of Will Smith. A side forged not in fame, but in love, heartbreak, and family. To understand the man who shattered on the night of his greatest triumph, we must rewind. Back to the early 90s. Back to when Will believed he had finally found not just fame, but home. It was 1992, at the very height of Fresh Prince. On set, Will met actress Cherie Zampino. Their romance blazed fast. That same year, they married. And later came a moment that transformed him forever. The day he held his firstborn, Trey, in trembling hands. The world seemed to pause. The boy from Philadelphia, once broken by fear, believed, at last, he had built a family untouched by shadows. But shadows never stay buried. When Will Smith first held his son Trey, a tiny hand curled around his finger, and in that fragile grasp, he felt redemption. In Trey's first cry, he heard the silencing of his own childhood nightmares. He later admitted that moment was the purest victory of his life, greater than any Grammy, greater than any blockbuster. For a time, he truly believed he had broken the cycle of pain that haunted him. But fame is a jealous intruder. Hollywood didn't knock before entering. It barged into Will's marriage with Cherie Zampino, stealing time, laughter, and peace. By 1995, just 3 years after their vows, their world collapsed. Divorce. The word Will once feared most became his reality. He confessed, "Divorce was the ultimate failure for me." Yet the deepest scar wasn't losing Cherie. It was watching Trey slip further away. He could fill stadiums, but he couldn't hold his own son's trust. Time, though merciless, offered healing. Slowly, painfully, Will rebuilt that bond. Not through grand gestures, but through presence. Patiently, waiting for Trey to open the door again. And when he did, with small laughs, returned hugs, and quiet forgiveness, Will realized success means nothing if you fail at home. Legacy lives in children, not in trophies. In 1997, destiny appeared again. Will married Jada Pinkett. Together, they became Hollywood royalty. Jaden born in 1998, Willow in 2000. Their home, alive with laughter, looked like salvation. To Will, Jada was not just a partner, she was a force, pushing him, sharpening him. Their bond shimmered with promise. But no fairy tale survives without cracks. Over time, private pain became public spectacle. Whispers of unusual boundaries, rumors of separation, and finally in 2020, Jada's now infamous word, entanglement. The revelation cut deep, but the real wound was older. Years of pressure, silence, and distance. Will sat beside her as the world watched. His eyes revealed not the fearless hero, but a man torn between pride, pain, and devotion. Truth emerged. Since 2016, they had lived apart, married yet fractured. And yet, they endured. Will still called her the love of my life. Their story, messy, raw, unfinished, was not a fairy tale, but a mirror. Proof that even the brightest marriages carry storms, and sometimes love survives not because it is perfect, but because it refuses to quit. Then came 2016's cruelest blow. Will's father, Willard Sr., the man who had instilled discipline yet scarred him with violence, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Only months left. The news forced Will to confront an impossible paradox. How do you say goodbye to someone who is both your foundation and your wound? At his father's bedside, roles reversed. No longer the frozen child, Will was now the man trying to make peace. They spoke of life, regret, and the strange entwining of love and hurt. Will later reflected that forgiveness does not erase the past. It simply decides which part to carry forward. When his father passed, Will carried no applause, no spotlight, only silence. But within that silence, he found something greater than victory. He found release. He laid down resentment, held on to strength, and discovered one of life's hardest truths. Sometimes, the greatest freedom we'll ever know is forgiveness. In 2019, Will Smith sat in a hospital room thinking it was just a routine check. It wasn't. Doctors found a precancerous polyp during a colonoscopy. They removed it quickly, but to Will, the shadow it cast was heavier than the growth itself. His father had died of cancer just 3 years earlier. Now the fear was his own. He couldn't escape the thought. Would my children one day stand at my bedside like I once stood at his? For the man who had built his life on invincibility, it was a brutal reminder. Legends are human. Flesh is fragile. That scare changed him. Health wasn't about looking strong on magazine covers. It was about survival, about gratitude for the body that carried him through storms. 2 years later, in 2021, Will launched a YouTube series, Best Shape of My Life. He told fans it was about fitness, but it quickly revealed something deeper. Behind the push-ups, the sweat, the constant grind, we saw his doubts, his exhaustion, his battles with darker thoughts. Viewers were stunned, but instead of tarnishing him, it humanized him. For once, vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was courage. That same year, he released his memoir, simply titled Will. Inside, he peeled back the armor, childhood terror, the night his mother was hit, the scars of divorce, the regrets that haunted him. Writing wasn't just therapy, it was survival. For readers, it wasn't just a book, it was a revelation. The man behind the movie star finally stepped into the light, but storms always brewed beneath his surface. Health scares, shame from scandal, the restless weight of expectation. And yet, even carrying all that, Will built a fortress in Calabasas, a sprawling 150-acre estate where silence replaced chaos. A place with its own lake, theater, studio, and even basketball courts. To the world, it looked like a palace. To Will, it was proof that peace isn't gifted. It has to be built, choice by choice. By now, his empire was vast, an estimated $350 to $400 million spread through real estate, films, music, his media company Westbrook Inc., and a fleet of luxury. But ask Will himself, and he'll tell you, money doesn't shield you from regret or loss. Bankruptcy in his 20s, the burn of scandal, the shadow of mortality, all of it taught him the same truth. Wealth means nothing without balance in the soul. So now, he treats every doctor's visit as a form of discipline. He works out, eats with restraint, and urges his fans to see health not as vanity, but as survival. Family has mended, piece by piece. In 2025, even with years of separation, he, Jada, and the kids gathered for her birthday. Laughter replacing headlines, presence replacing perfection. Jaden has carved a world in fashion. Willow carries music like fire in her veins. And Trey, once distant, is now a steady presence. His relationship with Will transformed into something unshakable. For a man terrified of repeating his father's mistakes, that redemption was priceless. And still, the story continued. In 2022, emancipation demanded his soul, but fell quiet in the shadow of the Oscars scandal. Yet, 2 years later, Bad Boys 4 roared past $400 million, proof that audiences hadn't forgotten the king of the box office. And then came the music. In 2025, his first full album in 20 years. One track, in particular, Beautiful Scars, stood out. It wasn't just a song, it was a confession, a promise to turn wounds into art, shame into testimony. Not every project is certain. I Am Legend 2 whispers from development, Fast and Loose remains in limbo. But Will keeps creating, keeps moving forward. His empire is no longer just about him. It's a stage for his family, a legacy of voices beyond his own. The Fresh Prince is no longer fresh. He's no longer a prince. He's something rarer. A man who's known triumph and humiliation, health and frailty, scars and second chances, and has still found the courage to rise. Because greatness is not defined by the absence of wounds, it's found in carrying them, with grace, until they teach you how to endure. If you believe Will Smith's story is more than fame, if you believe it's about scars, strength, and second chances, press like. And tell me in the comments, what moment of his journey, his triumphs, or even his mistakes has touched your life the most?